Hello everyone, it's me Yaya from Active Culture Family, and I'm here at Rio Cosmico, my homestead, which is also a temple and library of earth magic located in Kumeyaay territory outside of San Diego, California. A little while back, we promised participants in one of our workshops a list of historical fiction novels worth checking out. As scholar practitioners, we believe passionately in the importance of the historical fiction genre because it represents a unique means of combining rigorous, historically accurate research with esoteric knowledge, firsthand mystical experience, and informed imagination. Having a place where we can use all of our capacities to transmit a frequency and a message without the threat of assessment by solely academic criteria is essential because, among other things, it enables us to intuit things about the past and about our own ancestral traditions that patriarchal ways of knowing both insist cannot be known and also continue to go to great efforts to try to eradicate. Here we share just a handful of historical fiction books that have helped us to reclaim parts of ourselves that have been shamed into hiding, burned, buried, or otherwise lost in the sands of time. So the first one I'll start with today, I'm choosing because it's probably like the most influential, maybe one of the first historical fiction books that I just got pulled completely into. I had such a profound experience of grief and awakening of ancestral memories because it takes place in England. The general idea is like a King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table kind of fantasy novel, but told from the perspective of the women. And that would be the simplest way to describe it, but how I would describe it would be a book that invites us into the moment where the old ways died and what happened, what relationships broke down, what miscommunications, what unresolvable feelings between people created a constellation of cause and effect that led to the end of the women's mysteries, the knowledge of living in relationship to the nature spirits of that land, and kind of gave way to these petty, consumerist building of empires and monarchies with kings and queens and all of that. I will say there's been kings and queens for in the old ways also, but with kings who do not feel they required the blessing of the goddess or of the land, and didn't seek the blessing of the goddess and the land or the people to rule, were not creating in collaboration with the living landscape around them. So a lot of people who read this who don't have a volume of first-hand mystical experience yet can feel it to be too accurate a mirror of what can go wrong in the relationships between women in the temples, and that's valid critique of the book, but I just think if you were there, which I think a lot of us were, a lot of our ancestors were in some way, then it awakens buried memories, buried grief, and that grief is essential that we touch and regain sensation in places where we become calloused in order for us to have access to the empathy that enables us to show up and stay strong for oppressed groups now who need us to be able to perceive uncomfortable truths, to look at the past without turning away because it's too painful. If we call it fiction, it can be a little more comfortable for our psyche to go there, and I do think we need to go there. Another really influential one for me, and so many women, like if you've ever been to a moon lodge or a red tent or a sister circle of any kind, there's no way that that's led by, I would say anyone under the age of 40, there's no way that you didn't read this book. We'll never say never, but it's unlikely that this book did not come onto the facilitator's radar and wasn't deeply influential. Because again, it awakens buried memories. We have lived our lives in the context of the temple. That has been a valid life choice for women who did not want to marry and have a bunch of babies, and women who did want to marry and didn't go on to marry and have babies. There was room for that also, but it was a choice that could be made as an alternative if we needed or wanted an alternative. These blood mysteries, as long as PMS is the norm, meaning like a syndrome, that the signs our body is telling us that it's going into this massively powerful ceremony are categorized as a syndrome and pathologized in the way they are in the culture, and that's our language around them, then it's going to continue to hurt because we're out of alignment. So if you haven't read this book and you have any form of PMS, please consider this as a possibility before having anything removed. The Passion of Mary Magdalene, it's big. It was a commitment to read, but one that I felt was important because Elizabeth Cunningham's research is so in-depth. And so if you've ever wanted to understand the cultural context of some of the beliefs that have been handed to us or shape our world that we're not sure are serving, this just so filled with information that the fictional narrative is nested within. This also, I would call the Passion of Mary Magdalene part of a subgenre of historical fiction, which is historical fiction written by people who obviously have a lot of first-hand direct mystical experience with the archetypes and the energies of the Christ consciousness and the Magdalene, who are working fervently, ardently, even desperately to help contemporary women and priestesses and religious practitioners, spiritual practitioners, esoteric practitioners alike to understand that Mary Magdalene and Jesus Christ may have been people, but those people were embodiments of an archetype that was embodied as Isis, as Osiris, in myths throughout, ancient Mesopotamia and Sumeria and Egypt that were filled with nature spirits and village deities, and that they're just contemporary iterations. Like you get the software update and you get the whatever and the whatever 2.0 and 3 and 3.0, like that these are all of these different, Isis and Inanna and Ishtar and Mary Magdalene, and that Mary was a Magdalene. A Magdalene is a role, and the role is what creates the through line of similarities. The responsibilities of the Magdalene are the things that we as women, as mothers, as priestesses resonate with and can help us understand what we're even talking about when we say the Magdalene, and what that relationship between the Magdalene and the Christ was, and if it's important to us, if it could help us understand certain things going on within or around us. Another book in that lineage, this Magdalene historical fiction exploration / transmissions, The Lineage of the Codes of Light. I did enjoy this in small chunks. I felt that the overall format was a little less readable, just like a personal opinion, but to just read chapters at a time and read the stories, again, was able to kind of touch on and awaken certain memories in my own process with just a little bit more of a galactic upper realms kind of feel. Actually, I'll mention a couple more in that Magdalene, Prism of the Magdalene, Sisterhood of the Rose kind of mystery school. The Passion of Isis and Osiris, I haven't read it yet. I have a feeling it's going to be super intense for me. I have an Isis headdress on my arm as one of my first tattoos, and her story involves having her beloved killed and dismembered and distributed all over the earth, and her spending her like huge long periods of time combing the earth and combing the bottom of the river for pieces of him, pieces of her dead lover, and putting him back together. So it's necromancy, but what woman can't relate to the feeling of combing the world for flashes and glimpses of this bigger picture of a beloved partner that you might not have ever met, or you may have gotten to be embodied with in one relationship that got away. So I'm a little scared, but it's been recommended to me urgently by many sisters of mine, so I pass that along to you. And then the Moon Under Her Feet, now again recommended to me by another priestess sister, and I thought this one did the best job as a piece of writing, articulating the holographic, shape-shifting, multidimensional Magdalene across time, and how that can be embodied in one person or many people simultaneously. And just the idea that's really close to my heart, that the point of studying these goddess archetypes is to recognize the goddess in ourselves and come to recognize the goddess in every woman and in everything, really. It does a nice job articulating the way that we can relate to another human or embodied woman with the understanding that we're relating with the goddess. Next, I will share Kindred by Octavia Butler, and I'm actually going to read the back of this one because it's not in the same Magdalene sort of lineage. Dana, a black woman, celebrates her 26th birthday with her husband in 1976, only to be snatched abruptly from her home in Southern California and transported to the antebellum South. Rufus, the white son of a plantation owner, is drowning, and Dana is summoned across the years to save him. After this first summons, Dana returns again and again to the plantation to protect Rufus and ensure that he will grow to manhood and father the daughter who will become Dana's ancestor. So there's some real similarities here with this idea of showing a more contemporary woman who is time traveling or shape-shifting or in other magical means connecting deeply with the past, and in every case living through atrocities, genocides, and eradications of people and ways of life, and the way that those connections can really deeply affect and inform who we are now. So one way, that a really obvious way that happens now, is dreams. That we can have dreams of things that we quote unquote have no experience of, and yet they can shape the outcome of our path, our personality, our offerings. And so this, I think this book is really important. I can sort of relate it to my Irish ancestry, where people on the island will say, isn't it so frustrating that we just can't know so much about the past and about where the incredible earthworks and symbols come from, because what is known is what has been written down by the Catholic missionaries. And so when that's what's considered knowing, then yeah, there's so much we can't know. So there's so much that we feel we can't really understand also about slavery in the United States, because there's only so many firsthand narratives that we have written down, and then our academic assessment. And so I feel it's so courageous of Octavia Butler to kind of give herself and her body and her creative intuitive process to time traveling. So it's like the book is like a science fiction about time travel, but how is what she's doing not time travel? That she's like allowing her whole sensitive vessel to go as fully as possible into those painful experiences to benefit us all, help us understand them in a more deeply embodied way. And last, I will gleefully put the teachings of Don Juan, A Yaqui Way of Knowledge by Carlos Castaneda, in its proper place, as many people have done, but I'll do it again, as historical fiction. And a lot of people have read these books. They're deeply inspiring to the creative mystic. It is definitely possible to read them and learn a lot in the intuitive way of knowing, to have a lot touched on and opened up and become accessible to us in our own body, because they're beautiful, evocative pieces of fiction. The problem is that Carlos Castaneda himself and his followers insist that it's historically accurate. And as we all know, those who insist that the Bible is historically accurate and meant to be followed literally can do a lot of harm from that belief, and that a lot of harm was caused in that belief regarding this body of historical fiction. That has been proven over and over again, what library that Carlos went to and what great actual esoteric spiritual wisdom traditions he gleaned his inspiration from, and then used his creativity to create fictitious, varied accounts of these kind of experiences. And that's why they resonate with us. And that the people who went all in for his cult, the ones that lived, sometimes say that it was like one of the most creative, empowering, kind of liberating times in their life, to just really choose to try to embody their mythic reality and what was most exciting and interesting to them fully. Other people report like really erratic, terrifying, shaming, punitive behavior from their teacher, and those closest to him all died mysteriously, and they were all women, and they all died mysteriously after divorcing their families. So we see where it can go to take things too far. But too far is subjective, of course, but I consider if all of your closest followers divorce their families and end up mysteriously dead, then I consider that too far. You to decide for yourself. But if you're the kind of person that whenever you're in the contact of like pulsing primordial creativity, you get really activated to go back to your studio and make your own art, you don't want to like seek out that artist and try to have sex with them or join their cult or whatever. You just it just really excites you to like get in your own kitchen or pick up your instrument or your paintbrush or whatever your means is, your pen, and make your own art. Then I would say that there is still a lot of medicine in that way of just getting creatively activated and getting the juices flowing. in this author's fiction. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you'll share with us your own favorite historical fiction books and your experiences with the ones that we mentioned here below in the comments. And if the ideas we're sharing here excite you, then we invite you to join us on patreon.com/activeculturefamily for over 100 printable PDF practice guides, live online fellowship and practice opportunities, and rituals for witches, wizards, priestesses, wise women, and other non-conforming wisdom keepers like you. Blessings. If you enjoyed this video, please let us know by liking and subscribing. There's even a little bell icon in the upper right corner of your screen that will make it so you get notified whenever we post a new video here on this channel.